Shavua Tov, everybody. Shana Tova. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief, brought to you by Lay of the Land, where we take a look at those top stories making headlines every Monday to Thursday. Today will be a broadcast with a difference. It is the 7th of October, 1 full year since the atrocities of the 7th of October 2023. And while the calendar says 7th of October 2024, we in Israel are still on the 7th of October 2023. And the mourning around the country, the grief is palpable. In ceremonies across the country, from Nova, the site of the festival where over 360 were brutally murdered, raped, and mutilated and burnt by Hamas terrorists when they infiltrated at 6:29 that Black Sabbath morning, to the kibbutzim of the Otef, Kibbutz Be'eri, Nir Oz, Mefalsim, Kfar Aza, Nachal Oz, Kisufim, Kerem Shalom, and so many, many others, to the army bases, to the towns of Sderot and Ofakim, to the road of death, Road 232. And I'm going to post a link to a documentary that is agonizing to watch. It is called The Killing Roads, but it is so important. A year later, when we barely had counted the bodies or learnt of the atrocities, when many around the world started to deny what happened. This despite Hamas's gleeful filming of their massacre as they went community to community, base to base, and all over the Nova Festival to slaughter as many Jews and foreign nationals as they could. They also took 251 hostages that day. The elderly, men, women, whole families, and babies. As I sit here today, 101 hostages remain held captive in the Gaza Strip. The situation for them is absolutely dire, and we want them home now. So let's take a look at the events of the past year. And I don't have any script. I'm just speaking to you from the bottom of my heart. And I want to say something. And first of all, I want to thank all of you for coming along with us, for holding our hands and at times actually holding me up through this very, very difficult year. As profoundly difficult as it has been, as somebody who is a journalist and as a recorder of history, as all of the journalists are, and I really want to take a minute to salute my colleagues, especially my Israeli colleagues. I want to thank all of you for coming along on my numerous visits to the South. In a very, very odd way, it is a profound honor to be the voices of those who have been forever silenced, to make sure that the world does not forget what happened that Black Saturday morning. A morning where we got up ready to celebrate Simchat Torah, a Jewish holy festival. It was not only the Sabbath, it was the festival of Simchat Torah, one of the most joyous days, one of the most holy days in the Jewish calendar, where we celebrate receiving the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the very books that our whole ethos as Jews is based on. When Hamas infiltrated, thousands of Hamas terrorists infiltrated and committed their litany of horror by raping, mutilating, murdering, burning alive whole families, and kidnapping. I have walked the killing fields of the South. I took many of you along with me last week. I have been to many of the kibbutzim. I have seen the destruction for myself. I have read the numbers on the wall that tell the story of the destruction and the atrocities that happened inside. I have smelt the stench of death that a year later still hangs over the areas of death. I have walked the Nova Festival site and heard the trees whisper to me, "Don't forget what happened here. Tell our story." I have been into the tiny miguniot, the tiny roadside shelters that became death traps. As I have shown many of you, those roadside shelters are built for maybe about 10 people, 30, 40, 50 crowded inside before they were annihilated by Hamas. I have driven Road 232, where the spectres of those murdered still is in my mind's eye. I have looked into the eyes of the families of hostages. I have embraced the grieving parents. There are no words, no adequate words that you can communicate with them. I have stood sentinel as part of honor guards as hearses have slowly moved past us to take our fallen soldiers, over 700 of them who have paid with their lives since the 7th of October, defending the citizens of this country, having to deal with the most horrific slurs against them by those who would seek the right of Israel to defend herself. I have had a father ask me, why? I have no answers to the father of a fallen. Today, in a devastating moment, I watched the ceremony at Nova Festival, where you could hear above the silence the piercing and mournful animalistic cry of a grieving family member. There is no adequate word to describe that level of pain. I've looked around at the fellow citizens of this country who have been nothing less than remarkable over this past year. Looked into their eyes, and we all know what we are feeling, and we are absolutely devastated. Still, a year later. I have heard from so many of you around the world, in communities in Canada, Australia, South Africa, the United States, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Germany, France, Austria, Italy, everywhere, all corners of the earth, and felt your pain, not only at the massacre of the 7th of October, but at the cruel and indiscriminate rise of anti-Semitism as it metastasizes into an unbearable cancer in the form of Israelophobia and anti-Zionism. No sooner than the attacks had happened, then many took to the streets to celebrate and deny. Anti-Semitism, the oldest, most irrational form of hatred, could only manifest its way in the form where people both deny and celebrate the mass murder of Jews, the worst atrocities committed against the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and the worst day in Israel's history. It did not seem to matter to them that amongst the victims were foreign nationals and people who are Muslim, Christian, Bedouin, Druze, Hindu, Buddhist, and atheists. All they saw was the joy of the bloodlust of the murder of Jews. I've seen the magnificence in our young generation, who many wrote off as the TikTok generation, who did not wait for the calls from their commanding officers and boarded planes from around the world and got into their cars or hitched a ride, or in the case of one of our young soldiers, ran in his uniform still wet to the sites of the battle to defend his country. I have seen over the past year countless rallies to release the hostages, cities all around the world decorated in yellow ribbons for our hostages, and God bless you all for doing that. We have had the most phenomenal support from our allies around the world. Sometimes we feel so alone, but we know we're not, because I know you, our Israel Brief community, and so many around the world of all religions are standing with us as we fight on the vanguard for Western civilization and the values that we hold dear. As we have said time and again since the 7th of October last year until this very day today, we are the front line. It will not stop with us. It begins with us, but it never ends with us. And we are fighting, more often than not, alone, for the very values of freedom and democracy that we all hold so dear. We take special comfort in the many Iranians around the world who are standing steadfastly with Israel. That should be a lesson to so many. At times, this year has knocked the wind and the very breath out of our bodies. At times, it has been hard to stand up and keep on fighting. At times, we have let divisions enter what has been the most magnificent unity. But one thing is for sure, as history has proven time and again through time immemorial, from the days of the Bible, through the Inquisition, through the pogroms, through the Holocaust, and now until today, the Jewish people exist. Now, today, tomorrow, forever. As we have said so many times over the last year, Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people live. Yachad Nenatzeach, and together we will win. And although at times it seems almost Sisyphean as we push that boulder up the wall, but I believe truly in my heart that history will repeat itself, not just in the way that it has with the massacre of Jews, but in the way that we have triumphed, as we always have. We remember that we stand on the shoulders of giants. We remember whose genes, whose blood, whose story runs through our very DNA. And along with the hate that metastasizes, so too does our resilience, and so too does our pride in who we are. I want to thank you all today for taking the time to listen to me as I opine and I share some of our feelings. Tomorrow we will return to normal programming, but today I ask you all to take a moment to reflect on the events of the last year. It doesn't mean that we ignore the suffering of the Palestinians. We empathize greatly. We did not want this war that Hamas and our Hezbollah have forced on the people of Israel and the people of southern Lebanon and the people of Gaza. We pray for a day where they join the ever-growing circle of peace, where our region is rid of the scourge of terrorism forever. We see their pain. We feel their pain. We want an end to the pain. To some of you, I might have rambled on for now, I think about 20 or so minutes, but I want to thank you for holding the space for me to share, to grieve, and to be a voice for those whose voices have been silenced forever. My name is Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. God bless you all, and I will see you again tomorrow.